presentation is about don't delay building the differentiating technology. Otherwise, perceived progress is 0 and your startup dies. Very straightforward message. Two very important things, differentiating technology and perceived progress. That's what matters. Everything else does not really matter, otherwise your startup dies. And I'm gonna give an example of what I mean with two different startups that take two different paths, and one is differentiating technology and the other one has zero perceived progress, so that you hopefully understand afterwards that one path is better than the other. All right, so startup A delays building differentiating technology, which means it loses. And startup B immediately builds the differentiating technology, which means it will win. Okay, startup A and startup B, the big question is what's the differentiating thing that they're building? And for the sake of this example, both are building reusable rockets that can fly to the moon. What's the differentiating thing? Well, incumbents already have rockets that fly to the moon, so the differentiating thing is the reusability. For startup A and startup B, everything that matters is, are they able to build reusable rockets that fly to the moon? Because if they're able to succeed, they're going to bring down the cost of flying to the moon by 90%, 99%, whatever it is, right? Now, the incumbents have a rocket that already flies to the moon. So startup A and startup B, they start out at the same time in year 0, and both know that it's approximately going to take 8 years to build a reusable rocket that flies to the moon. And startup A and startup B now have a choice to make. How are they going to get to a reusable rocket that will fly to the moon? And startup A says, well, you know what? There is an existing rocket. It already flies to the moon. So we're going to take that rocket, we're going to take this 20 years of research and development and adjust the rocket so that in 8 years it's going to be reusable, right? Sounds easy. We're taking existing technology and modify it so that we get to the differentiating thing, which is reusability. Startup B says, well, you know, if the thing we have to prove is that it's possible to build reusable rockets, which out there the incumbents, for example, say is not possible, then let's try to prove this with a very small scale version. And the small scale version is we're going to build a mini rocket which will fly 100 meters into the air, come back down, and fly back up. We're not going to try to use the existing technology because what we really want to prove is that you can build reusable rockets. Now, you might think, or the path progresses. After 2 years, investors are knocking on the door of startup B and ask, hey, 2 years ago, you had a rocket that flew 100 meters into the air and it was reusable, where are you now? Where are you now? What progress did you do? And they can say, oh, you know what? Our rocket now flies 1,000 meters into the air, so 1 kilometer. Over the last 2 years, from 100 meters to a kilometer. We really made progress, and the rocket that flies a kilometer into the air is still reusable. So next year, or in 2 years, we're going to have a rocket that flies 100 kilometers into the air. Oh, wow, okay. It seems like they're getting somewhere. All while startup A, you knock on the door of startup A and you ask, what progress did you do? Oh, we made a lot of progress. Internally, we changed the rocket to make it somewhat compatible to reusability in 4 years. And I think we're going to get there. Oh, okay, cool. So is your rocket reusable? No, it's not. It's not yet. It's going to be reusable in 4, 5, 6 years. Oh, okay. And then the investors look at the incumbents, the investors, the employees, whoever looks at the company, and they're like, but your rocket is not reusable. It maybe flies to the moon, but that already exists for a long time. What's the difference? Startup A gets into a nasty situation where it's unclear what progress they're making and they get compared to what the incumbents already have. There's nothing new. There's no differentiation. Now, in year 4, the same pattern occurs again. Startup A, what progress did you do? Oh, internally, we made so much progress. Oh, wow, great. So is your thing reusable? No, not yet. We're going to get there in 2, 3, 4 years. You knock on startup B's door. How much progress did you do? oh my God, like we're actually able to fly to lower orbit. We're able to get 100 kilometers into the air or even 1,000 kilometers into air in a reusable way. And I think we're going to get there in 2 years, that we're going to fly 500 kilometers into the air, 5,000 kilometers, whatever it is. You know, we're making progress and we're really excited about it. Something fascinating happens at this point between startup A and startup B. Startup A has zero visible progress. To the outside world, it's the same rocket that already exists. There's nothing new, and sure, someday it's going to be reusable. Let's see. Startup B, what was that? Startup B now stumbles onto a phenomenon which was not anticipated. So no perceived progress. It's undifferentiated to the existing rocket. Perceived progress. Those two rockets are differentiated. It's very clear that this rocket is not competing with the incumbents. You know, it's a different thing. It's a reusable rocket that flies into lower orbit. It's not flying to the moon. It's not a single-way rocket. Okay. And suddenly, startup B is getting an inquiry from someone that says, hey, I want to buy that rocket that is reusable and flies into lower orbit. And startup B thinks, why the heck would you want to do that? It's not flying to the moon. This is just an incremental step to flying to the moon. And the guy here says, oh, you know what? I can suddenly create a worldwide internet, and I just need to get to lower orbit. I just need to send a bunch of mini satellites into the orbit, and your reusable rocket that might not fly to the moon, but it flies to lower orbit with a 90% cost decrease, already makes that possible for me. Oh, wait, startup B is thinking, we didn't anticipate that. We never thought that someone would care about a low orbit rocket. And indeed, when startup B started in year 0, nobody cared about that because, heck, the technology didn't exist. So startup B, in contrast to startup A, not only has visible progress, but accidentally, they're creating a new market. The technology is already good enough for something that the market, latent demand, wanted to do for a long time, but couldn't because the technology didn't exist. So startup B in year 6 finds itself in a nice position where they're making progress with their moon rocket. You know, they can fly beyond lower orbit now. But they also created a new market where they're sending a bunch of satellites to the lower orbit. Incredible. All while, in year 8, of course, you know, they're expanding the business. In year 8, they actually achieved building the moon rocket because it was clear to investors they're making progress. It's nice. All while, the chances are that startup A died. It was unclear, if you go back, what the heck did startup A do over the course of 6 years? Sure, they did a lot, they worked a lot, internally they wired the rocket differently, whatever. It was not reusable in year 4, it was not reusable in year 6, and if you're an investor, where are you going to invest? Startup A, where you don't have an idea what they're doing, or startup B, where you can see, okay, you know what? A mini rocket that flies 100 meters into the air, okay. But 2 years later, they flew into lower orbit, and now they're creating a new market. Who are you going to invest in? And it's not only investors. Who do you think has more fun building this stuff? Startup A or startup B? Startup B. Everyone on the team sees the progress. And not only everyone on the team, everyone that wants to join the company. Which company do you want to work for? Startup A or startup B? Obviously startup B, because you can see the progress. Okay, the problem with the non-visible progress of startup A is that chances are high that they're just going to die on the way to get to year 8, where eventually they would have succeeded adjusting the existing technology to be reusable. Why would anyone give them money if you can't see the progress? Why would anyone join the company if startup B exists? So, and of course the story goes that the incumbents that said you cannot build reusable rockets eventually will die too, the moment startup B is able to send the rocket to the moon. Now, if you look at the two different paths, startup A had delayed differentiation. They said, oh, we're going to take an existing technology, and instead of proving from day 1 that we can build reusable rockets, they thought they're smart by taking existing technology, by taking 20, 30 years of research and development and trying to somehow make it work being reusable. The problem was there was low to no perceived progress. Really, your startup was about making reusable rockets. One-way rockets already existed for a long time. And if you cannot show progress over the course of 6, 7, 8 years, you're not going to get money, you're not going to be able to hire people, and internally the motivation will be really low because everyone is wondering, what the heck are we doing? Why don't we have a reusable rocket? Startup A died eventually. Startup B decided, no, we're going to be differentiated from day one. You know, if everything that matters is reusable rockets, then that's what we're going to prove. Even if we prove it with a very, very mini version that only flies 100 meters into the air, knowing that our goal is to eventually make a reusable rocket that flies to the moon. The benefit was, to everyone internally, to everyone externally, the progress was visible. Wow, they're making progress on the differentiating thing that they're pitching. And by accident, not only did they win, but they created new markets where they didn't foresee, and so did likely no one else, foresee that a rocket that can fly to lower orbit in a reusable fashion would already create demand for people that would buy that. Startup A would have never created that market because they never had a rocket that would be reusable for the lower orbit. They were planning all along to go to the moon and do it once and 100% right and go to the moon. You get the story. I mentioned it, Startup B also has higher team motivation. You see the progress. Startup B can also leverage new tech to build things faster. You know, the reality is if Startup A chooses an existing technology that's 20 and 30 years of research and development, that's really nice, but at the end of the day, you will not be able to leverage new technology that might make building your path forward easier. And that also means for Startup B, hiring is tremendously easier. They don't need experts that know the Russian Sputnik or Saturn V from the Americans to be experts in it. Why? They don't need it. They build a mini rocket that flies 100 meters into the air. Next year it flies 1 kilometer, and in 2 years it flies 100 kilometers. They leverage new technology, and everyone is just trained while building the rocket. You don't need experts in the old technology, which makes hiring much, much easier. So that's the end of this talk, and I hope what you take out of that is you want to be Startup B. You want to find out what is the differentiating thing. Is it building rockets or reusable rockets? If it's the reusability part, do you have to aim for the moon on day one? If the answer is no, which in most cases it's not, then how fast can you prove that differentiating thing? And the moment you realize that if you started with Startup A's approach of taking an existing technology, and you figure out that actually that technology leads to no visible progress because people ask, how is this different from the thing that exists? And you pitch, oh, in 4 years, it's gonna be different, trust me. All right, sure, I'm gonna ask again in 4 years. And you give the same answer again. That's not satisfying. That's not satisfying for you, that's not satisfying for the team, that's not satisfying for external people. So you really want to be Startup B, cannot go back. You really want to be Startup B that starts small and therefore has perceived progress.